Hello. We're live. I don't know, do we do need the other lit on as well? Is that too dark there?
I'm going to turn it up a bit.
Yeah, I think so. Oops. Yeah, that's better. Oops, sorry guys. Let's just get sorted. Right, I know what, I'll move that. That's the easiest thing. Hey, welcome to our whatever number of our monthly live sessions. And I've got loads of stuff to go through. Loads of people have given us loads of content and topics to dive right into. So welcome everyone. And if anyone comes up with any suggestions or sidelines or wants to comment or broaden the topic or specify it in some way, then just let us know, because Papa is on the...
I'll be on hand to read out any messages.
Yes, Papa's on the thing, ready to go. Do you want me to put it on mine and then it'll come? Because otherwise it could... I wonder if I can see it on mine though. Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. I'm on it. Right, there you go. So let's, is that the chat? Live chat.
Okay.
Okay. So if something goes on there and it says like, do something with it so it can go on, you've got to like give it permission sometimes.
Okay.
Okay, so starting off.
Little rainbow dinosaur raw says hey.
Hey. welcome, welcome. Right, I'm going to start with, because we had so many things given to us. Let's go with the wheelchair restricted and ddlg. So I'm going to start with disability and ddlg, and actually broaden that into another thing where someone was talking about age, and we had a bit of ageism going on, and then there's the dynamic between someone being older or younger, and the sub and the dom and all those different things, and lots of different things that could restrict you in your ability or your rights or your permission to go with something because I can't because of this or that or the other. And something like disability or age or size or shape or gender or sexuality or anything could get in the way of you thinking, oh, can I do this, or can I be part of this dynamic in some way? So the first thing is to actually give yourself permission and say, I'm as valid as any other person, and it doesn't matter really what it looks like, because we're all putting aside our adult space and the glaringly obvious that we're all adults of whatever age, shape and size. And we're going into a different space that allows us to regress or to make believe or to have some kind of dynamic that puts us into a care system. So it's really about, you know, giving yourself that permission to play, and to play in a way that might look weird to others. And if you have something else that's in the way that you think, oh, you're too old, or you're in a wheelchair and you can't, or you're the wrong gender, or you're something that says to yourself, I shouldn't be allowed to do this, then that would be the beginning space to begin to start with therapy, to say to yourself, where is that shame coming from? Whose indoctrine am I listening to? And what's going on there that this condition of worth has told me I'm not allowed. Everyone else is allowed, but not me. And think to yourself, would I project that onto anyone else who was my gender or age or disability or any other disability aside from my own? Would I tell someone else, oh no, you can't because you got that thing? I wouldn't do that. So why would I do that to myself? And we all carry around a lot of things that tell us we shouldn't be allowed, and they're called conditions of worth, the things that we've been raised with, or some horrible person who took their day out on us, and we've been a sensitive person and absorbed that in and sort of made a restructure in ourselves that makes us talk to ourselves in a certain way or feel a certain way about ourselves. But that's a dialogue of self that you've got to begin with. I'm allowed. And when you say I'm allowed, then you go, well, what does it look like for me? And that's where you get into the specifics. So if you do have a thing if you have like a co-riding thing where you have to deal with it, you have like I'm dealing with this regression thing that's all a little bit weird, and I don't know what it is, and it's all a bit scary, it's all a bit exciting, and I'm going on this journey. But also I have this this sort of talking to myself about who I am and what I am and being allowed. Those two things can be separated out so that you do your adult work with your dialogue of self and your permissions and any conditions of worth that you've got lurking around, getting in the way of you being allowed. And then you go to the other part where you're not going to drag all that adult projection onto it. You're going to try and keep it away from it so that it's free to play and say what would help it along its way. So then it depends on what is getting in your way. So if it is, say, your size, you need to find things that are little that fit you. And there's quite a few companies that go really small and really big. So everyone is catered for. So you just got to find something that makes you feel like, see, I've got something that fits now and it feels really great and I'm loving it. And now when I'm in this, I can feel really free to just be myself and like regress into it. Or save up and have something made. If you can do that with a seamstress or something, a little onesie or some little dress or something that would just make you feel like you have a bit more freedom in your own body to feel regressed instead of longing for these things that don't fit or whatever. And say with disability, so it depends on what disability you have. I've got quite a few disabilities, but quite often when I restructure how I'm going to think about it, my perspective around it, if I let go of my control and my need to sort of be good and like be responsible and be, you know, my own caretaker and all those sort of things, some disabilities can sort of like, you know, aid this little space, this caregiving, regressed, handing over your abilities for someone else to do them. So I suppose I should have checked whether they were a caregiver or little. And the way that I read it was that they're a little with more need to help navigate little space with a wheelchair. But I could be wrong, and they could be a caregiver with a wheelchair navigating a little. So I might do both. So if you're in a wheelchair and you are the little, or you have a disability that gets in the way of you being able to care for yourself, handing over that to your caregiver and saying, right, well, I find it hard some days to even put my shoes on because my back is so bad, or to cut my food up sometimes. My hands have real flare-ups and they can become almost useless, like getting dressed and stuff, like pulling my things up. This pincer grip is very painful sometimes. So sort of saying, oh, well, I'm in this dynamic where there's this person that really wants to care on me and love me like that. So I've just got to give myself permission to say, like, A, we're in this dynamic. B, it kind of really suits this disability I've got if I could just let you be allowed to care for that. So it may be that you have a little bit of blocking that says, you probably spent your whole life being told to get on with it and be a big girl or boy and do everything yourself and be really brave and la la la. So being able to go back to, I don't have to be brave, I don't have to get it done. Someone else does want to help me, in fact, do it for me, and like gift yourself that handing over of the accountability and the adulting of it. You're handing it over to someone else. And if you start thinking about your own disability in a way that you can say, how could this aid someone caring for me? How could we bring this? And the fact, so if you are the little in the wheelchair, you have this mobility issues. And, you know, depending on your size ratio, if you have a caregiver that isn't big enough to pick you up, or you're too big to be picked up in ratio to your caregiver, there's ways to try and make it that part of your immobility is being babied, is being regressed in some way, so that more of your actions are helped along by your adult. So if it is that you are the little in the wheelchair, I would challenge you to think about all the things you find difficult and kind of find a way that you can hand them over so it can become part of your routine of caregiving little, and then someone else can say, you know, I notice you also struggle with this. It would be really nice if I could just cut your food up and sometimes feed you if like your hands are really sore or you're just feeling really baby. And sometimes I get it, you just want me to cut it up and you can feed yourself. And sometimes you just want to cut it up yourself because your hands work today. So it just depends on how you're feeling on the day as well, that your communication is really transparent and open with your other so that they understand where you're at today with your relationship with your disability or your gender or your size or your age. Because sometimes it just might be a lot of reassurance and kindness and caring of the fact that I really like it this way, and the fact that I have to help you with that just adds to it, and the fact that you're letting me do this for you now just feels really good, and I'm so glad you're letting me. So it just depends, and you've got to try and find the ways that you can broaden the spectrum and invite things in. So let me know if that sort of got to where you wanted me to get it to, and if not, send me another email and I will get more specific. I might text you back actually and double check with you that I've covered it for you. So that all brings into this other thing where we're marginalizing people, and there was a whole load of race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, special needs, social economic statuses, and size and disability, where people are getting discriminated against because I think, especially when you're going online and you're sharing yourself, you're being vulnerable enough to share yourself, you go into the superficial sort of arena of being judged for what it looks like, and actually we're putting aside what it looks like. We're very, very ownership and understanding that what it looks like is a bit weird, and also we're putting ourselves into fantasy land because our bodies don't match our little space internally, but we're putting that aside. We're make-believing, and we're allowing ourselves to gradually get more and more in touch and in relationship with this child part of our self and our body. So for people looking on from the outside in who just stumble across, yeah, it looks fucking weird, of course, and they're going to judge it. So trying to remember that you don't have to absorb that judgment. You can put up a boundary that says people who are ignorant, who don't understand, who haven't come in and who are just walking in on it and thinking, whoa, this looks something weird. That makes sense. That makes sense in that scenario. So if you just sort of take it with a pinch of salt and also find it a little bit ironic that they don't get it and a bit funny, and you don't have to absorb either their banter or their meanness and spite because of their ignorance. You can just go, yeah, you don't get it. If you are like at the very early days of coming to terms with all these things, don't put it out there too much, because it could end up feeling like you're having to protect something that's so vulnerable that you're not ready to protect, and you end up absorbing all these horrible comments because you think that what someone can say to you or how they can view it is some kind of judgment or perspective of who you are, when it truly isn't. But if you have a sense of self that has there's an insecurity, or there is a self-identity issue, and or you can have real ups and downs, be really protective over sharing it, because this is a very vulnerable space, and if you can't sort of flick the crap off when it comes along, or when someone boulders in with like banter that, you know, from the outside in would probably be funny, like it would be funny if you can put yourself in their shoes. So you don't have to take it personally. You can just say, oh well, bravo, you don't faint when you get scared, and you don't need regression therapy or some kind of dynamic that allows your body to feel like it's real or something. I'm really glad for you, but I do, and you don't have to understand it. So you're sort of boundarying that right to it, whilst also making it specific to you, And, you know, I love the variation and the spectrum of people in littlespace, that people bringing notice to you're too old, or you're too big, or you're too whatever, or you're a boy and you shouldn't be, like all of these bizarre statements. They just don't understand it, and maybe are jealous as well. You know, quite a lot of the really the noisiest, loudest, naziest men end up being something of such conflict in inside themselves, to do with their sexuality or their transgenderism or their kink into abdl or baby space, and they're just fighting with this internal thing that they just have to be mean to everyone else about. And if you can just see them as poor vulnerable souls looking for the light, and they stumbled into your space, like, don't get me wrong, putting like a firm, stern sort of boundary around how people are going to treat your space, because you're not allowed to come in and wreck it. We're making a community here for safety, and if it doesn't belong to you, that's great, jog on, but don't come in and destroy it for everyone else that it does belong to. But yeah, take it on the chin that for the majority it's going to look a bit funny, but that's all right. They don't have to get it. As someone said on my we've got a few early vlogs where we were doing yoga space, and we did this sort of yoga story time, which I really enjoyed. But like, some funny person is called, oh, Mother of God or something like that, which is funny, and I can just imagine him thinking, what have I walked in on here, like, Jesus Christ. But like, if you just, you know, yeah, it's funny, but like, it's also serious, and this is where it stems from. And if you can just understand it a little bit, that if it's not for you, that's absolutely fine, but you don't have to wreck it for anyone else. That they might, you know, take away a little bit, like, whoa, but also, oh, okay then. So just hold your space, and if you're not ready to hold your space, don't share it with others too much. It's so intimate, so vulnerable, and body and child part work, which is kind of what this is, and all kink space is child part work, because it's your play with your body, and it's your most vulnerable play, because it's your sexual and usually your darker deviant side and your sensual side, and all of your thoughts and fantasies. So that is all to do with body and play, which is the corner of yourself, which is the child part. And you've got your adult part and your parental part, which is your skill gaining, adulting, and your communication, relationship, environment of self. So if you can get to the point where you own it, you know it, you're boundaried with it, you can take a fair amount of, okay, whatever, and stay safe. Maybe start sharing it. But if you're not there yet, keep it precious, because it is precious. So the next one, I did a whole load of stuff that I was going to do, but then we've got a load more questions. So if we get to that, we get to it, but I'm going to hold it for now.
Crack on with the questions.
Yeah, because it was all about neuroscience, and everyone else might not be as bang into neuroscience as I am. So the next one was taking space before arguments. And this is a really good one, because when you're contracting dynamics, extra spaces within the relationship, contraring, you could go from one area to, if you're a parent as well, you're shifting from different roles all day long, and it depends on who's in the room and what part of you is out. So being able to navigate when things are starting to get triggered or stressed, and have a trigger plan and a care plan, a reaction plan. And each time you practice it, try and debrief after, so that you learn something more and you implicate more into it. But the first port of call is to know what you need when you're triggered. So some people need you to stay, and let's talk this through until it's better. And if you left, that would be the worst thing to happen. Whereas other people, if you stay, we're going to end up murdering each other. I need some space. Leave me alone until I feel better, and I will come back to you. And contracting that when you have two people that have the opposite ends of it is really difficult, because if one person needs to go to their cave and the other person needs to stay here and sort it out, how do you navigate that? And the way to do that is to respect both needs. So if one person absolutely needs to go and like find what their words are and how they feel and be able to talk about it in a way that isn't shouting and bumping, that's actually communicating with the person I love, giving them, saying, understanding that of their mechanism, number one. And if you're someone that needs to stay and sort it out, so that you can say, they can understand that you're the one that likes to sort it out and they're the one that likes to go before they can sort it out. Creating a little time limit on it. So saying to the person that you're leaving, that you know that hurts, I need to take some space, but I'll be back in 5 minutes, in half an hour, tomorrow, or at the end of the weekend. Let me sleep on it. So that you can create these contracts that take care of how each individually needs to stay safe, because no one's right or wrong. It's not right to stay and it's not right to go. It's just difference. And we're sort of like that, aren't we? Like I'm a real separation anxiety, and if you're going and it's not sorted, then you're going forever. And it was all sort of triggers around my history and my childhood and my trauma and my family and how I was treated. And whereas Simon Papa has to really have some quiet time to even find his words and know what it is he needs to say. So we gradually contracted that I will try and gift what I need to say, and I won't like come at it emotional. We very rarely argue, do we? But like, it's very rare we have a raised argument, like a shouting type argument. Usually it's talking. And if we're in that stage where we're not getting to the point of argument, we're trying to save argument, I will say, this is how I'm feeling, and then respect that Simon needs to think about that before he has an answer. I'm not going to demand, come on, give me the answer. Like, I won't get an answer. He'll just make up something to just please me, which I'm not into that. So once you know what their mechanism is of safety, because that's the key, they have to get safe again before their prefrontal cortex will switch back on, so that they can give you a word, that they can give you a meaningful thing, that they can take the emotion and bring it into feeling and say, oh, this is what's happened and how I feel, or how I've made you feel, or what I did, or what you did, or whatever. So if you know you're really good at words and you need to talk, give yourself a time limit, because the more you talk, the more you're giving the person that needs the time more homework, and they'll get lost in that. So try and narrow down what we're dealing with today. So you're not into the minutiae. You're trying to think, if we elevate, what is the elevation of this topic? We don't have to get into specifics, because we could have 20 different arguments about a similar ilk of thing. This is a general genre of irritation, or not being listened to, or forgetfulness, or some kind of trigger. So once you know what it is, you can find the statement that says, look, this is what's happened, this is how you've made me feel, and this trigger has happened again. And they can say, right, I need some space for that, and you can gift them that. And then also you can take that time. It's actually, in the beginning of our relationship of 27 years, it was very much me waiting for Simon, but now it's usually you waiting for me. Like, you've caught up with your ability to communicate, your relationship with your feelings and being able to share them with me, and I'm usually like trying to find my navigation, especially in this whole trauma, reconfiguring myself and how I feel, and what has been broken and what still exists, and trying to bring it all back together. I need to retreat. And because we've had this history where Simon feels very strongly, don't leave her, because that's the wrong thing to do. It's sort of changed now where I'm like, leave me a minute while I just work it out. And Simon's like, well, I better not leave her. And I'm like, no, do leave me for a minute. And we can slightly get into a thing where I'm like, oh, give me some space. And you're like, I shouldn't give her some space. So we've recontracted that actually, when I come to my room, my bedroom, and this is mainly my room, because during the week we sleep apart, because of I'm a really light sleeper and Simon snores, and I can only take sleeping tablets like twice a week. it's not really good for you to take any more than that. So in the long term, this makes sense to us. So if I'm coming to my room, our room, my room, this is my space, and it means, and if the door is shut, it means that I'm working on something privately and I don't need my husband, my children, my dog, no one. I just need my safe space to find out what is going on in my body so that I can then communicate it to you. And Simon really respects that for me now, that he understands that my body's shifted now and it doesn't need this other thing that it had for 26 years. It needs this new thing that's got a little bit of a new space. That, right, I can respect that. And like, it's probably weird for you to be on the outside waiting, instead of me being on the outside waiting of the cave, waiting for Simon sort of, he's come back with his, you know, response or his feelings, and we can talk in the second stage of it. And that brings me to the next thing, which is you mustn't think of arguments as a single fixed situation. They're more like an ongoing maintenance of relationship. So you don't have to fix something before bed. You don't have to fix this thing right now. You have to, first of all, just get safe so that you can get out of your amygdala and your animal style reactions and into your prefrontal cortex and your thoughtful human empathy. And when you get there, you can then gift it that space that says, I don't have to fix all of this today. I just have to remember that we're on the same team. Know that we trust each other, know that we've debriefed once, and we will need to talk about it again, probably ongoingly as it evolves in our life, and as I evolve, and as Simon evolves, or as you evolve. So gifting it that space to not have to be fixed in one go, to be allowed to be taken in bite sizes. You know, if it feels like a really big thing and it involves your family and this and that, right, okay, let's put it into portions. This seems like a 5-portion thing. Which one should we go with first? And then we'll do the other 4 in a timely scale so that we don't wreck ourselves over it. And we're always meeting it in a thoughtful way instead of a scared animal reaction way. So let me just quickly check on my notes for her. So it's own safe retreats, that's my room, space to let out emotion. So don't try and talk while you're having your emotion, because really emotion isn't words, it's bodily sensations. So if you need to cry, if you need to scream, if you need to like, I'm just feeling really angry right now, I just need to like, just don't look at me for a second while I just let this out, or just scream in a pillow, or just have a big cry, or just like whatever the emotion is, let that pass, let that just come out. Don't expect it to have words yet. Let it be in the room, let your body adjust to it, and then try and create a buffer zone where you insert a cup of tea, or a change of atmosphere, or we go from upstairs to downstairs, or go for a wee, or, you know, brush your hair, something that just reattaches you to your own body, having had your emotion. And then when you start feeling like yourself again, rather than this overriding feeling, emotion, you can then start, oh, I think I know what happened. You triggered me. I felt really upset. This thing happened today. It was the last straw. Someone used up the butter and now I hate everything. You know, you can then put it into words, and then you can put, oh, that does sound like a crappy day. No wonder me coming in and doing this tipped you over the edge. I'm sorry about that. And you can start meeting it in a like a more kind, thoughtful, we're on the same team. Like I do a lot of couples counseling, and couples come in usually for counseling because they're trying to win. One of them's trying to win at marriage. One's trying to be the best marriage. And like, they don't realize that when they're the winner and their partner's the loser, that they're both the loser. You both lose, don't you realize? When one of you's the winner in the marriage, you're both losing, or relationship. So that feeling of like getting out of the battle, getting out of the scoring point, taking things personally, and actively witnessing the human being you've chosen and remembering why you chose them, and not holding that against them when it doesn't suit your mood right now. I can't hate my husband because he's a quiet, grounded, you know, emotions sort of caring, thoughtful person, and like be, oh, he's not a bad boy, he's not this, he's not that, and like start being horrible to him because of the man he's not. I've got to remember that I chose this man because he does make me feel safe. And it is nice to balance out my, you know, flying around creativity with someone that's like, hey, take a break, let's go to sleep for a little bit, let's have something to eat, like, let's remember we're people, and this is all amazing, I love it, but like, slow down a bit. And I get to speed him up a bit when he's getting so relaxed, he's getting sedentary. So we like balance each other out.
Okay,
yeah. And you gotta remember why you chose someone and why your body felt attracted to this person, and then not hold it against them because right now you want fun instead of someone that's really steady and stable and homebound. What you really want to say is, I'm feeling bored and can we plan something? Not your shit. Own your own emotion and say, oh, because that's the other thing. Like, life is monotonous. It's drudgery. It's repetition. It's boredom. And you have to create that excitement, that gifting, that investment, those celebrations, those traditions and creativities and play. And if you don't create them, then it is going to die. And well, it's not the relationship's fault. It's for the two people that weren't, you know, stoking that fire. And when you introduce things like this kind of dynamic, any kind of BDSM, any kind of caregiver little kink space, green, amber, red things, where you're sort of adding a second or third dynamic to the sense of self and play and expression, that gives you more space to be creative and to express yourself, but also has more responsibility in looking after it. So so you've got to get your feelings and your head stroke body back in links, so that you're not, you realize either whether you're reacting from your amygdala or your prefrontal cortex, and then you're attaching yourself to your body. So some people overthink things and get very cognitively, they're like really lecturizing themselves, what's the word, intellectualizing themselves. And other people don't have any logic whatsoever, and they get so lost in the emotion that they can't remember who someone is. Like, and you get a bit offended. They're like, really? You think that's who I am? That I would do that to you? But because their emotions are so high, they can't see the truth, because they're all body. They haven't got a head right now. And then other people are all head. They haven't got a body. So again, you've got to remember what your partner and you do in that situation. If one goes head and one goes body, no one's right or wrong. We just got to remember that, oh yeah, you do the opposite to me when we're stressed or upset or whatever, and we can work out a plan that gets everyone on the bus. We don't have to have a bus for bodies and a bus for heads. We can just go, heads and bodies can be on the same bus, and however you need to do it, that's okay, as long as we understand it. And if someone has like a lot of rage issues, and they've got so much that they've held in and compressed and pushed down, that every time they're triggered, it comes out in this massive oversensitive thing because it's been held in for so long. Inviting them to express that anger in a safe way and being part of that support and saying, like, you know, I feel really sad that, like, when you get upset and then I trigger you, all of this rage comes out, and where all that comes from, and I'd like to like invite it safely. And you could write about it, you could go to a boxing thing, get like a punch bag, you could go to the recycling center and smash up all the jars, you could like make a fire, like get pictures of people that have done you wrong and burn them. You could, you know, do all sorts of things that invites this rage and really respects it in a way that isn't just bumping all over the place because someone accidentally stepped on it. You know, there's a way of debriefing after argument, if it has gone that way, to find, oh, let's learn our lessons here and make them really make us grateful that we had this argument, because otherwise we'd never known this, and now we do know it. Look how easier we dance, and look how much better we can communicate.
Got some questions
for
you. But first off, Blessed Days says good evening. Alyssa Summon says safe words are always good for a contracted space. between the couples to come back and sort it out later.
Yeah.
Lucera Martin says that's great. Rachel says, how do I start an age regression journal, but a journal to also help with my DID and anxiety as well?
Yeah. Okay, so this, I'm going to get onto that in 1 second. Can you remind me of that when I get to the end of this little thing, because that will come in with the next topic.
Okay, well, we'll finish up because we've got
a few. Yay, cool.
Okay,
so let me just finish these. So you've got to remember connection, expression to each other, trigger plans, timeout. So having a code word or a code sign or a contracted safe word that says, I'm getting unsafe now. I need space. So the other immediately understands with a very small word, the whole environment has changed and I need to respect that. Have your trigger plan so that you know how to respond when something goes wrong, or when an argument's happening, or when we've triggered each other in certain way. We now know how to look after this, because I know that when you're triggered, what you need is space, a cup of tea, something to take your mind off it. We'll put some friends on, we'll do something, and then we'll talk about it. It's not that we're getting rid of the thing that triggered it, it's that we're not dealing with it right now in amygdala. Just a crazy space to deal with stress. You soothe the amygdala, then you go, right, what caused this trigger out? Like, let's have a look at it. We'll meet it just as soon as your body feels like a human again, not like a raging bull or a barking dog or a scared mouse in the corner. Respect, leave me alone to understand my feelings, or I need 5 minutes, 30 minutes to sleep on it, a day or two, to have you trust me to find myself and share it with you. So if you can find a sentence that says, when you need space, this isn't about you, this is about me. I need to find myself, and as soon as I have, you need to trust that I'm going to come and share it with you, because you're my boo. Like, let's do this and get that trust back in. Also, I have this therapy bubble called Rainbow Body Scan, which helps you get into the habit of understanding your full body and how you relate to it. So your brain, your mouth and communication, your heart space and empathy, your stomach, which is your second, they call it your second brain, but really it's your first brain, because before your brain has said, oh, we're scared, your stomach has already done 3,000 things to get ready for it. So really your first brain, your instinct, your sexual space, your vulnerability, and then your grounding. So it's a really good way of taking you on a process. Rainbow Body Scan, look for Therapy Bubbles, Rainbow Body Scan, and it just gives you a little process to get back in your body. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 6-inch stair, 6-inch, 12-foot stair, those sort of things, the neuroscience that takes you out of amygdala and into prefrontal cortex. Do something like that first. Bottle, dummy, snuggle, story time, nap, something, so that then you can, in that soothing space, have your emotion and then get into your prefrontal cortex, which will explain it. Just don't rely on your amygdala to explain shit. It can't. That's like asking a newborn baby to recite something to you. It's not gonna. So you just got to accept the space that's happened. I'm now alerted. I can't make sense anymore. I've got to get safe. We need to both know how each of us in that scenario gets safe. And usually one person is more alert than the other. So in a couple, it changes who's going to be the guy that goes, oh, I think we got triggered here. Let's get into the trigger plan, because you take it in turns to be the one that's triggered. So, so you have to express, notice, wound locate. So that's locating what the trigger was and how it was triggered, and then gift. So you're telling someone else what has happened for you, and then you can learn from it. So with that thing, what was it about? Journaling. So littlespace journaling. Someone just told me about, because I found in the Colour Me Littles
book. Before you go on, someone said, have you heard of Colour Me Little Journals? Is that the one you've got?
Yes.
It was Elissa Solomon said that.
Yes.
And then saying to Rachel she should invest in one of them. It's got loads of good stuff.
It's amazing.
So why don't you show everyone that now?
It's absolutely amazing. You've got chore charts, and you get to like choose what you're working on each week. You've got like the months sort of, this is my goal, and you get to tick it off. This, which I've just worked out, it's like a scale, and you can write things in, and then you colour in each bit to depend on how you felt that day. And it's sort of like a mood board in a picture. And there's also this thing called year of pixels. So you get a graph, like lots of squares type graph thing, and you do a table on it for the 30 days of the month, and you have like a key, so sad, tired, angry,
Furious,
furious, numb,
ambivalent.
Yeah, whatever your main sort of, spectrum of feelings. And then you just color in each square, or you could have 4 squares for each one, depending on how big: morning, lunchtime, afternoon, bedtime, sleep. And then you get like a picture scape of how your days, weeks, months, year go. And you can then see little patterns evolving. So you might see, oh, like Monday, Tuesday, I'm always really sad. Let me put some things in place. Oh, winter is terrible for me. I maybe have seasonal affective disorder. I'm going to put some things in place. Or, it could be your hormonal. Every time I'm premenstrual or ovulating, I have this dip. So you can start like understanding yourself a bit better and creating something that you can respond to, because the whole point of journaling is to make something that you can look back on and learn something about yourself with, or to document a process of growth and evolution. So I would say, in my first vlogs, I did a bit of journaling and like littlespace journaling. You might want to watch a couple of those, like vlog 1 to 15 or something. But finding little prompts, daily prompts that allow you to talk about different parts of yourself. So your adult spectrum, your communication of self, your parental side, and your child part space, so that you're making sure you look after all the parts of self. Which brings me to another question. Building safety in the parent, adult, child triangle, and working with yourself as an adult caregiver to your own little self. So this self-work. And if you think about trauma safety, and what your triggers are, and what you're recovering, and what you're healing, what makes sense to that space, your space specifically, what age your trauma was, what kind of trauma it was, so that you can understand what triggers might be around, what feelings might be evoked, how to look after those feelings, what is relevant to your little space. If you're like 13 or 14, you're not going to want dummies and nappies. But if you're a baby in 0 to 4, you sure are going to want all that stuff. So actively looking at what's going on, then you can, because you really need your parental part, your structure of communicating yourself, your self-environment to be better, so that your adult can look after your child part. So your parent part isn't really going to do that work. It's going to create the environment and the dialogue and how we talk to ourselves. But it's your adult structure that goes out and gets the skills, that earns your life, that puts in the boundaries, that does the daily maintenance and upkeep of being an adult, so that you can create space for your little space, for your play, for your hobby, for your rest, for your body. So having this, you've got to like have a homeostasis, a balance, where you're dialoguing between the 3 parts, you're checking in on all 3 parts of yourself, and you're seeing where the deficit and investment needs to go. So if all you've been doing is little space, well, then you need to check that your dialogue and you're looking, because your parental communicative, we're looking after the bigger picture of this, should have something to say about that, because we've got to earn, we've got to clean, we've got to look after ourselves, we've got to do all these other things that gift us this time and opportunity to be little again. Whereas if all we're doing is being an adult, we're never a body, we never have play, we never have rest, we never have fantasy and investment in our body, food, water. We don't have that celebration. And if all we are is an adult gaining all our skills, with a parental part that says, yes, go ahead, this child part we've left behind, you're never going to have things that balance out your work-life play, because all you'll do is driven to prove yourself in this top corner of who you are. So I want everyone to think about themselves in terms of a triangle and where the deficit is. So, because it would be terrible to have to be buying all these lovely things and surrounding yourself with child space work if you have this corner that goes, you're dirty for even wanting that. Like you're actively making a new shame cycle with your own body. So like you've got to check in on which part needs the work, because it might not be the child part space that's failing the child part space. It might be your adult that's not doing the work to gain all the things that it needs, or your parental that's putting it in an environment that devalues and invalidates it all and makes it gross and disgusting. So have a look at what is needed and where it's needed, so that you can balance out the structure of it so it functions better. That's what we're wanting, a fully functioning thing. And it won't fully function if all you are is a child space, or all you are is a nice parent, but I'm just sit here like, reading stories. That's not going to gain me any of the skills I need. And creating a picture, I've got to get someone who's invested in that picture to go and mow over the lawns and gain the skills and get the money and all these other things. So
got another question for you. Rachel says she has a few personal messages. Would you be able to message you on Instagram?
Absolutely, for sure. Please do. I'd really love that. Or email me, autonomycounselling@outlook.com. I implore people to just do a big, massive, super storytelling, blah, 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 that I can just read over and I can see a big enough picture here to create a landscape, see where the deficit, gift you some kind of process that would help you gain more autonomy and self-governance over your body and your life and your relationship with yourself and others. So yes, please.
What's your email again?
autonomycounselling@outlook.com. You could put it in there if you want. Write it as a comment. So on this building safety, you need to contract what constant reassurance looks like, and you need to contract what your body needs. So if this is with other, then you would be saying to someone else, when I'm in this space or when I'm out of this space, it's really vulnerable, I'm really insecure. At first, I'm going to be really needy. I'm going to be needing lots of reassurance. Can the reassurance look a bit like this? These are the things that will help me feel safe and better. And I would like you to communicate what your hard no's are, and so that I can feel like you're having a good time here too, so that everyone can relax into it, so that you can contract that space. Some good therapy bubbles are on that are 113, 117 and 133, which is location of your validation. So we want an internal location of evaluation, kink work, and getting to know your parts of self. There's also a pride work one that's really good. And so that once you get to that sense of, I've achieved something, oh, I've made something with someone, oh, we've contracted something really precious, you are then able to go, oh, that's really prized and precious and proud, and I will hold that boundary, and I will hold it safe, and we will keep it maintained, and we won't let anyone else chuck their shit on it just because they don't understand. Who gives a crap? We'll hold it as our precious thing, that no one else needs to understand, so that you get into that ability to also be trauma informed, because I've got a therapy bubble on that. I think it's 137 or something, therapy bubble, so that you and your partner, whoever you're contracting the space with, either yourself or someone else, they understand the spectrum of what it is. And so where the wound is and how you protect it and not trigger it and not create more wounding, but also how you can then play So it's hard to get the two structures. You have to get that safety and that trauma informedness there so that you can feel free enough to play. So don't jump the gun. And if you do, don't expect it to always go well, because you're jumping the gun, and that's taking personally something that you haven't prepared. So you've got to remember that if you haven't talked about this, no one is a mind reader, and they might get it wrong, and like sometimes catastrophically wrong. And that's unfair to judge if you haven't contracted properly. So if you're in a kink space, you're going into dynamics with self or other that need added communication, then find your way. I mean, if it's not verbal, there's all sorts of other ways to communicate. Like you can make a Pinterest board, you could write a storytelling email, you could find a YouTube thing, vlog, something, article that just says it for you. You could collate a few things that say, this is a roundabout thing, and once you've watched all them, we'll talk about it. Find a way of you expressing yourself so that you don't get lost in it and someone else doesn't get lost in it.
Got another question.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important or even relevant for your family or close friends to know about your little lifestyle, if it's a big part of your life? And also, can tell you we're coming up to we're at the end of the therapeutic hour now.
Okay.
So
we've already done an hour.
You've got 9 minutes left to wrap up.
No, we usually do 90 minutes, but that's okay.
We do an hour.
We do an hour and a half. We sure do. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. So that slips into something from another question as well about little space living with teens. So with your family, the way you've got to think about it is, again, I would separate it out, because kink and sex isn't anything to do with anyone but the two people or group of people that are having it. And I wouldn't like burden anyone else with your ins and outs of your kinky space unless you're in a forum or a group of people that are there to talk about it, because that shit takes consent, and you can't just be out putting it on people, because it makes uncomfortability, and everyone deserves to feel safe. So kink space, keep it so separate that it is separate. It looks different, it feels different, it's contracted differently, it has different words, it has different things that we wear that put on different collar or something that says we're going from there to here. And when you go from there to here, make sure it's private. So if we're having kink space that's nothing to do with our little space, but we're pretty kinky, our children are gone, they're staying somewhere, we've gone to a log cabin, we're private, we're safe, we're intimate, and we're on our own. So we don't have to worry about someone else's consent in that fact. Aside from that, so over here is little space in the wholesome caregiver little, regression therapy, nervous system regulation, looking after trauma space that I feel like really should be anywhere and everywhere, and people kind of need to be educated about that so they're not so ignorant and discriminatory about it. But that again requires the person who's done all the looking into it and they understand it all to remember that we're in the privileged place of having been educated. And I bet when we first looked on it, it was all a bit weird in first glance. So we've got to remember what we're offering up to people looks a bit strange from the outset. And that if we aren't good at communicating, then maybe we shouldn't bother with that, because if we can't communicate it well, we'll just do damage with people that won't be able to understand. So find your audience, and if you can get to the point where, like with our teenagers, we waited until they were teenagers because I was so busy being a mama and making businesses and being an adult and making a marriage that was all adult, that I didn't have time for my child space. But once they became teenagers and we had more time and they didn't want or need us and like, go away parents and leave us to our own thing, we had more time, and I had some EMDR, eye movement desensitization, reuptake therapy that spoke about it, and we just started looking into it, and then we looked into it and it made all sorts of sense to all sorts of symptoms I had, but all the sorts of ways that we could soothe them, and it really worked for us. So then it was a case of us very gently and baby steps. My room didn't just spring up overnight like this. like watch the beginning therapy bubbles and you'll see it's like really sparse. I've always been a little bit eclectic and a bit weirdo, but it wasn't little space. And I was able to communicate to my dear friend and my children and anyone out, all my clients, anyone that comes to me to have their feet done, if I want to talk about it, I will, that I have a regression space therapy. And that me and my husband have this dynamic where he takes on the adult space of caregiving and I'm allowed to put aside having to think about things and regress on a scale depending on how much time and space and safety we have, that just resets my nervous system, and it feels good and it allows me to rest and recover. And I don't need you to understand it, but usually people are so interested that they really want to talk about it and know more and might kind of like that themselves, and they get all like, oh, interesting. So if you find a way of describing the original thing you're treating and how you're treating it in all the wholesome ways and what it means as a dynamic in a relationship, people will understand it in those terms. You just have to find the terms that they can digest. So, stuck with teens, if you're keeping it in secrecy from them, then finding your times and slotting them in, and it might have to be very planned, you know, and or just snatch moments where no one's in and you can do a kiss on the forehead, or you can make it that, look, I help mum with her shoes on because she's got a bad back, and they don't have to know that it's little space. Or I cut mum's food up because she's got sore hands. They don't have to know about that. You know, mums like soft toys. You know, mum's doing colouring to help reset her nervous system. If you want a dummy, when your teenagers are up in their room, you have a little hidey place for it that you can have it, and if you hear them coming down the stairs, you pop it back out. You know, keeping your privacy about your onesies or your nappies underneath your pajamas or your dressing gown. Having a nighttime routine, explaining to your children that you get really bad nightmares and your dad or your mum is going to give you a story at bedtime, so don't get freaked out about it. And, you know, gradually introduce these little things that at first glance, or if you just dump them all on them, they'd think, oh my God, but bit by bit, they would go, oh, they're doing regression therapy. Oh, daddy's reading mama a story. Oh, they're having a little space bath time. Nothing weird about this. And so that you find your way either to be secret about it without shame, or to find a way of being more out about it without revealing your intimate privacy, which no one wants to hear about. Well, unless you're really into that. I love hearing about that because I'm a counsellor and I love the interweave and I love getting to sex work with my couples. And it usually takes ages for them to get that safe where they're like, yeah, let's talk about it. We're going to sort our relationship. Let's get all of it sorted. And then they'll start talking about it. But find your audience. And obviously your teenage sons probably aren't it. They'll probably be like, you know, puking up in their own mouth. But they can understand, I've got something, I've got a wound, I've got a disability, I've got a nervous system dysregulation, and I found this really weird and wacky way of helping it out. Can you understand that? So giving it that thing, there is some bubbles on that. The trauma recovery and neuroscience bubble. So that's about it is about little space, but I call it child part work. And then there's also child part work, part 1, 2, and 3. And that can help you get a better relationship with your child part, which then allows you to communicate it with someone else without shame terms, without discrimination terms, without feeling a bit icky, because once you get a relationship better with yourself, you can then express it with others without feeling that shame. Keep private intimacy private. Contract gradual safety. Things like, I won't regress in front of you, but you may hear me and daddy doing it, or you may hear a bedtime story, or you may hear bath time with child music on and me splashing away in the bath with a toy. So don't be overwhelmed or feel like whatever, don't feel like I'm going to just put it out all in front of you, but don't feel gross if you overhear it. It's just this, so that they can feel safe in that contracting. But also then that gives them that space to say, this is what I wouldn't be comfortable with. It took my daughter a while to like not find my little part's voice a bit funny. And so I had to like, there was this transition of like holding my adult space there so I could protect my child part for not feeling shamed, but also letting my daughter come to terms with the fact that I've got this whole other voice that does sound a bit weird when it just comes out of nowhere. But now, like over the 2 years that we've been working with this, my daughter will actively, like, she is the worst for bringing out Dolly. Like, she's naughty with her. She's like doing a lot of regression therapy work with me because she's just allowed to be naughty. She's allowed to be silly, and she like eggs my child part on, and she like brings her out at times that are really like, we'll just be shopping, really needed to get on with something. Oh, Mum, Dolly, look at this. And I'm like, oh, let's have a look. And then we like sidewind for an hour because we're doing littlespace in the shop or whatever. So daughters, well, I was going to say daughters might be easier to speak with this about, but that is really genderism, and I'm just going to suck that right back up because that is just bullshit. Just know your own child and what they can feel and cope with. And if it is really none of it, then hold their respect that they don't need to have any of it. And we can find ways of expressing this in privacy, whilst also explaining that they might overhear some things, and this is what they are, in terms that they can sort of digest. Because, you know, you wouldn't invite them in on your sex play, so, and you wouldn't talk about it with them. So you've got to find a way of separating it out if it is sexual for you. If it's not sexual for you, then you may just have some shame work about it to do. Like, if there's nothing that's there that they would feel that you shouldn't talk about this with teenagers with, then what's there that's telling you you shouldn't? And it might be your respect for you knowing your teenager, that they just don't like talking about feelings, or you, or have that sort of relationship with you. So please just keep it over there, would you? But if you have a teenager that, you know, does want to know about, you know, your vulnerable side, or what treatments you're having, or what wounds you have, or as they're growing up, you know, interests or questions, we have a very open dialogue about everything. So we don't have closed conversations. So test the waters of your own teenagers. Yes.
So Mama Cass Reborn says, you are kind to others. Jack J says, these are honestly great ideas, my goodness. Sarah Martin says, thank you, that was really helpful. He's asking about how you deal with your little lifestyle, with what you've just been talking about.
With kids.
Yeah, and how you fit into your life. Yeah.
So it's not a case of fitting it in.
No, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Alyssa Solomon says they're going to the playground after this, as it was so perfect. I can go and regress comfortably with my partner. He's here with me. We've been watching this together. We're going to go out, put this into good use. Love you always.
Oh, so much love back. That's perfect. How brilliant. And that's the thing. It's like, once you get a deep relationship with it, once you understand it on an intimate level and understand its vulnerabilities and its needs and your partner and how they can express themselves, and giving them that right to express in safety, they're not going to be great at it at first. This is a gradual process of getting good at it. We had like 4 or 5 bath times before we had like what I had imagined was a bath time, a littlespace bath time, because it gradually, I'm really shy. I had to gradually sort of say, this might be a little bit, or could we have some? And now I think because we've been doing it for so long, my littlespace has, and Papa's been encouraging this boss baby sort of thing, where I get to say how I feel and what I need, and boss Papa about, because he wants to care for me, and find that voice in me that's allowed to be thirsty. I'm thirsty, Papa. And Papa say, I'm going to get my baby a drink, and just sort of be allowed to do that and want to do that and express to me that he's enjoying that part, and I'm not making him have an extra role in the house where he's got to do another chore. He's finally being allowed to love me in the way that he's always wanted, that I've always been too strong to accept. So giving it that right to have a deep relationship with it. So then you're not fitting it in somewhere. It's always there. You're finding it in every moment. You're checking in on it. You're doing the little things that remind you. I've got this necklace that's got this, it's like a fidget spinner on the end. It's sort of like a lead actually, but it's this thing where it's about staying this close to me, and it's like this symbol of you're always this close to me. We're always attached, we're always connected. And Papa just sort of grabs it whenever he can see like my full-on frowns in my face and I'm like full-on adulting and like my body's getting stressed because I've forgotten I'm even a body. He can just grab it and be like, come here, let me just reset you for a second. Where's my wife? Where's my Faye? Where's my Dolly? Where's everyone? Bring you back out, kiss on the forehead. Have you eaten? Right, let's sit down because now Papa's going to say it's time to eat. Like, it changes the dynamic from being this super badass adulting fucking warrior into, remember you've got a body that you've ignored for so long that it has seizures when it gets scared now. So can you now listen to Papa? Because, and we're in it now. So finding that way to authentically and intimately check in on it at all times and use those code words and use those code languages. And we have a little tug thing that, hey, and when we do that, it's immediately into littlespace caregiver, because come here, come, where are you? Come back to this space. Remember, with this safe space. So find a way to get deeply meaningful with it, because otherwise it can run the risk of just becoming this kink space, superficial kink space that's just inherently sexual. And that's not a dynamic. That is a space you go to and play. Whereas like the whole contracting of, these are the roles in it, and these are the ways we're going to be in those roles, and this is how you can encourage that out, and these are the times when it's not appropriate, and these are the times, like every day you could do this just to remind me that, like, you know, we're doing this daily and this is a meaningful thing. Find your own way, because some people it is just a frivolous visiting thing that they get a sexual pleasure from, and they might go to the log cabin and they have a night and then they don't need to for another few months or next year or whatever. But if this is a deep and meaningful part of yourself, this is your child part that you're trying to be connected with, and be connected with someone else and make a dynamic that suits that part, that you can visit daily or weekly or whatever, every time your body needs resetting. But really not really like that, really more like, I don't have to get to the point where I have to reset my body because I daily have a child part. I have a body every day that needs food, rest, water, fun and play. So if I remember that on a daily, I shouldn't get dysregulated again, because I'm always allowed to have that part of me that requires, that has need. The other thing about the teens thing, I had another person say about teens and early adults back home and sort of reconfiguring that space when you've had that time because they've left the nest, but now they've flown back for a minute because, you know, life and this world right now is really difficult. It's really hard to get your life started up as an early adult. And so having to rely on your parents again and move back into that structure is probably really hard for both sets of people there, the youngling, the early adult that's having to rely on their parents again, but also the parents that got used to a bit of space and privacy and were able to, like, oh, now we've got to put that stuff away, and oh, that feels like I'm having to hold in again. So the thing about that is that this is two sets of adults now. We're not talking about children and adults. We're talking about two adults that have equal rights. And if we can just find that respect of communication that, okay, we're all going to find this a bit hard, we're all going to find it a bit of a transition. Has anyone got anything that they want respecting? Has anyone got any hard boundaries or firm things that they want understanding? And then from there, this is what we would like you to understand. And you can put in a contracting space that makes sense to everyone. And if it is that once a week you guys have to go out, and I don't care if it's for 10 rides around the block or to someone else's house or to the cinema, but we need some private time at least once a week, and it needs to be scheduled. Or, you know, we make sure that, right, you're back and you're an adult now, so I'm not going to ever come in your room. If you want to put a lock on it, that's fine, but if I need to get you, I will knock and wait outside, and if I don't get an answer, I won't get in your room and I won't invade your privacy, and I would like the same, please. So as adults, we're not intruding on each other's adult space. We're able to feel safe, that we can rely on that adult space, that everyone understands adult space, and that we need to knock, or we need to be respectful of people's privacy. And we don't want to like remove your right to have little space and nervous system regulation, but also to not gross everyone else out. So we've got to have that dual respect that your teenagers are just by standard a bit grossed out by you. And if you show them something vulnerable and a little bit weirdo, they're going to be double grossed out about you. So finding a way that to communicate it that is least grossing outy allows them to understand it on a base level, and then we'll try and keep it as respectfully separate as possible. But if you have a good relationship with your teenagers, there's absolutely no reason why you can't share the wholesome, authentic child part space with them, because really we want to encourage our teenagers to hold on to that and not replicate getting on with being an adult and leaving it all behind, because that creates damage in our maintenance of our adult configuration. So sharing it with them in some way, or finding a video or an article or something that explains it so that they can understand it, could help them too, because they've gone out and then come back, so already they might be feeling a bit of failure and shamed and like, oh, I'm a crap adult or whatever. And if you show them, oh, we're all crap adults, oh my god, I'm so crap, I've got to visit childhood again, like if they can understand it from terms that are like, oh, all right, yeah, I could probably do it a bit of that, not like that, but like, yeah, I need to go and get a hobby again, or be allowed to have a weekend off or rest or whatever. And then you've got to try and leave your parenting behind, because you're not really their parent anymore. You're equal adults who happen to be their mum and dad. So you've got to keep trusting them that they've left and flown the nest, and now they are being trusting of you enough to say, I'm a bit vulnerable, can you support me for a minute? But that doesn't mean I want you to be my mummy and daddy again, but I'm coming back to be your good boy or your good girl. And understanding them coming back is a really hard thing for them, and that we're not gonna start doing that whole parenting thing. We're not going to do that. We're going to do, right, let's make this as respectful and as inclusive and as safe as possible for all of us. And is anyone worrying about anything? Is anyone struggling with anything? So we can just get it into a place where everyone feels safe. Another thing that I want to bring up today, because there's been a few people having this in the last month, where you just get ghosting. You get into this contracting of a play space, a kink space, or a relationship, and then all of a sudden you get ghosted. And no matter where on the spectrum it is, whether it is kink and sex space, or a deep relationship with your child part that's traumatized and you're working on healing that, either end of that space is a human being that's being very intimate and vulnerable with you. And to ghost them is just so disgustingly against what you've contracted in this adult sharing space, that I would like to invite people to think more when they're creating these spaces of talking about the endings, of creating the contracting to end. So, and we do this a lot. Like Barbara's like, oh, the what ifs. Because I was just wondering, and I'll come out with some like random like future like Armageddon kind of scenario, and I'll like, what would you do in this scenario, and we'll have a big talk about it. But it's because I want to feel safe that if we had endings, that we would respect each other, that these are my expectations. If we were, not that I'm expecting it, but I would want these things, and I would want to make sure that we had talked about this and what have you. So contracting endings, and you have to do that in counselling as well, and it's a really good thing if you're doing a contracting, and you should be contracting.
How do you know it's at the end?
What do you mean?
You said it's just contracted ending.
No, you contract endings at the beginning.
Oh.
Okay, so this is the problem people do. They think that they've got a contract at the end, and you don't. You contract at the beginning. You say, okay, we're getting into this space, don't know where it's going to go, but if it ends, this is what I expect from you. And I would like to have a real thoughtful conversation about how we're going to treat each other when we get to the end of play, when we get to the end of the relationship, when we get to the end of what makes sense for this time in our lives or our moment in time, that this is how I'm going to treat you, and this is how I would like to be treated. And if I'm going to do this with you, these are the things that need caring for and considering and protecting. And I'm not coming here as a warrior of sex games. I'm coming here with vulnerabilities and wounds, and I'm here to play, but also be treated as a human being and respected as such. And so when you get into those, you might sift out the bullshit. You might get rid of all the ones that are going to be the players and the ghosters, because they can't be bothered with that crap. And you will be left with people that are like, what an ingenious idea. Thanks so much. Well, this is how I would like to be treated, and how refreshing, and wow, I feel safe, and God, we're going to have such better dynamic or sex or play or friendship or whatever we're contracting here. So think about the value. I value myself before I even offer it to someone else. So I don't need to come and earn my value from you, and then if you don't value me, then I'm invaluable. Not invaluable, not valuable. I'm valid before I start. And if I'm going in this to go and get my validation, I would stop for a minute and go to counselling instead. I would go and find your validation of self, your self-identity, your worth, and then go and play. So I'm going to play with my value. I've got my value all in my pocket. I'm out to play now. I know who I am. Now I'm here. I'm valuable. So if you're going to play with me, these are my boundaries, these are my hard nose, this is my ending contract, this is what I expect as a human being, this is what my needs are. Can you tell me about yours? And if you can't, then we can't play. And that's how it needs to work if you want to have good fun and good relational depth. And that requires boundaries and prizing, and to be earned through relational depth, especially with kink. You have to have, because it's so frivolous and playful, you have to have that relational depth, because everyone's kink is not the same, and you have to have the safe words and contract that safety of space and being able to play. So think about contracting your endings before you even start, because it will weed out the crap, and it will enter in a whole fresh sort of, oh, look at this girl, like she's got it going on, or this boy, they've got it going on, like they know how this is going to be, and there's no expectation that we're starting some lifelong thing. We're contracting for this to be a moment in time, and if it grows beyond that, then we'll keep contracting it and allowing it to grow beyond itself. So let me just quickly I just quickly wanted to say thank you to everyone, because I put on not YouTube, what was it, Instagram, this thing. It was about the age. There was a couple of comments, one about ageism on my bath time thing, you know, littles of a certain age shouldn't be doing little space, and especially not on YouTube. But also this other one where someone commented on I've got this bit of a rant thing that was in response to support someone who's being bullied on the internet because they drew a picture that people are taking really offensively. But for me, what you do as an adult with other adults and what you draw as process, it shouldn't be shamed and rape cultured. But on there was a couple of really offensive comments, and I took them, on the chin without absorbing them whatsoever. But what I wanted to say thank you for was how much response I got from the internet of people like being really thoughtful and caring and like checking in on me, and oh, that was shit, oh, that's not true, and what crap, and I'm sorry you're having to have this. And I just wanted to say thank you, because that not that it was, that's not the externals aren't getting me down. My internal life and how we're reconfiguring our whole everything is what is wearing us. So this external thing is almost funny. It was sort of a bit of a light relief, because the whole irony was that that's the whole point. Like, the older you get, the less it's not meant to matter what the age of your body is, and we're putting that to one side, and that's the whole point. But I just wanted to say thank you for all the support I got with that, and I got a lot of messages and a lot of little hearts and stuff. And on my post about letting out your emotions, the tier one, about when you store up and you're trying to keep going, the best thing to do is just let it out, to let your body have its emotions and cry it out or rage it out, or get tired, or whatever it is that it needs to do to just express itself and not hold in anymore. And a lot of people responded to that as well, in care for me, rather than, oh yeah, you shouldn't hold in your emotions. They sort of checked in on me, which I thought was really thoughtful, because I was just trying to put a little vulnerability, like, let yourself have your emotions, invite other people to. But this community is, I really love the way it feels for each other. And even though everyone niggles, there's a few niggles around with the whole cross tagging and sexual, non-sexual, and minors and kink, and all these different things, and there's a lot of serious things going on that rub each other up the wrong way. But behind that is a whole ton of really loving, caring people, that even in that's just everyone trying to stay safe and keep everyone safe with each other. But I don't know, I just wanted to say thank you. It was really thoughtful. The last couple of topics we're going to get to today before we finish is BPD help, trust, trigger, and empathy. So borderline personality disorder is sort of like a mood and emotion regulation disorders. You can get really, there can be a spectrum of triggers and hypersensitivity and borderline sort of filters and irrationality, spontaneity, like not when you get, I can't think of the word, where you like get compulsive actions, obsessive compulsive actions, and you can really lose yourself in your BPD filter. So once it gets triggered, this whole, almost like a different person comes out with all this sort of extra energy, and can also, because of that, in their life have lots of endings, because the BPD filter has overwhelmed a relationship or something, or themselves. So their relationship with themselves or others can be thwarted with people leaving them, or people getting overwhelmed, or endings which aren't structured. They're like cut off or throw away. And so it can create this deep underlining feeling of mistrust and not being able to be vulnerable, and sort of numbing themselves and getting quite robotic, and almost feeding the trigger by isolating even further with that loneliness and that mistrust and shaming of self, because you can't get friendship, you can't hold on to friendship, or you always lose friendship, or you ruin it, or shaming yourself for how your body can feel hypersensitive or feel very, very loud in its emotions, and feel really ashamed of yourself. So for me, the trust is actually your trust of self. Once you get into that relationship where you trust yourself, to look after your BPD as well as your child parts, your body, your adult self, the way you talk to yourself in your parental corner, how you prize your adult that is your workhorse every day. And like usually we slog our workhorse and then call it all the shits under the sun because it didn't get everything done, when actually that's our workhorse, getting up every day to go out to work even though it feels like crap. Like that deserves some bravado and like some celebration and some care and repair. So building up that trust in yourself where you don't just take your little on and off the shelf like it's an object. You understand it's your body, and I need to have a relationship with that on a daily, morning, afternoon and night, and then check how it slept. Like I need to trust my body that I know it's there. And that relationship with self is the first port of call. When you get to the point where you trust yourself, because I will hold my boundary, I do know what I need, I will give my body what it needs on a daily, I am allowed to feel this, that and the other, I will receive these things because someone wants to gift me and not feel guilty. Once you get to that trust, you can then move to other, and you have to begin with, I have a trust issue, or I have a condition that can get in the way of my relationships.
Let yourself in.
Yeah. Huh?
Let yourself in.
Yeah. You've got to like gift yourself to that relationship, which means being vulnerable, not putting on a caricature or a robot or a pretend facade. And like, you know, with ASD where you learn to mask all the time, no one ever meets you. If you go in saying, look, I'm really awkward in social situations, or I've got a tic, or I've got a disability, or if you want me to come, you'll need to do this, or just be aware that I've got this couple of triggers, or if I start doing this, it's nothing to do with you, it's my condition and I'm learning to live with it, so just be patient with me. You're then, because you've trusted your own self and you've got your own relationship with yourself and you've let yourself in, you can then let yourself out that like, this is the real me, and like I really want to be invited to go out, but only to the middle part of the night. I don't like the pre-drinks, I don't like the drunks, I like the middle bit where we're going for dinner, and that's all I want to come for. But don't see it that I'm leaving, or you've got to make me enjoy the whole night. I've enjoyed the whole night bit of the night that I want. Then people will be like, oh yeah, of course, okay, well if you like that, well maybe we'll do that once a week, or we'll start with that so that you can come along, and then we'll go off to the other thing, not thinking that we're leaving you out, just knowing that you don't like the other bit, you don't like dancing all night, you don't want to go to the noisy club, or you don't want to do horse riding or whatever it is. You can then, because you're trusting yourself and you have a relationship with yourself, you can then explain it to others what it is to be you and what you need from friendship, and you can ask them what they need from your friendship, and it becomes a thing that is a dialogue, and something again like littlespace that you don't just deal with when you have a BPD trigger, you deal with it on the daily because you have BPD to look after, like I have CPTSD or this need thing, this non-epileptic attack disorder. I don't wait for it to be really bad, I look after it daily now. I used to be really bad, but now I'm really good at looking after it daily and changing the parameters of what is expected from me in a moment's notice, because I have a relationship with my body that I trust now. My body can trust me now. And now I can, because I know myself better out of the robotic state of being adulting and being a good girl, I can trust myself to explain to someone else that this is what's going on for me today, or might be going on for me tomorrow, or if this happens, it's not you, it's me, or whatever. So try and locate the trust work within yourself and see what you're not gifting yourself, what you're not trusting, what your body can't trust you to do for itself, what it's undermining, what it's sabotaging, what it's building up and then cutting down. You know, what this triangle look like, because if we're being really lovely to our child part and our triggers for our BPD are all in our adult part, we're just ignoring it, then how is that going to work out in a balance? Another thing, anxiety and overcoming sadness, depression, and is it okay to be an older litter in relation to your caregiver? So again, this is this invisible thing. It doesn't matter who is the big or little in terms of age or size. It matters who is big or little in terms of internal space, that feeling. So you could have a big, the adult, the caregiver, the dom, who is 4'5" and tiny and like really thin and skinny, and the little, and he'd be 22, and the little be 65, big, and you know, it doesn't really matter what the outside looks like as long as you're contracting what the inside feels like. So we've got to get it away from this superficiality of externals and realize it's so little to do with that it's actually irrelevant. So anytime some external person tries to make it relevant, you just tell them they don't know what they're talking about. Like, sorry, you don't realize what's relevant and what's not relevant. You're being actually so funny, it's ironic. Don't worry about those things. And if you are worrying about those things, have a look at it. Why am I stigmatic about size or age or who's older and who's taking on what role? Why does that matter to me? Where has that come from? Whose voice is that? Where is that condition of worth? And heal it, because it's usually a stigma against yourself. It's usually you thinking, I'm too old to be a little, or I'm too big to be a little, or I'm too whatever to be a little, or I'm not big enough to be a big, or I'm not manly enough to be a dom, or I'm not something enough to be, or I'm too womanly to be a dom. Like, all of those weird social constructs don't belong here. Be gone with you. And then get into your fantasy, your internal feeling, the structure of self that's beyond the external version. Like, we're all just bodies, and if we can just put that to one side, we could become beings, human beings. And the last thing, plan and execute routines for your little. So I want you to think about, if you're working solo or with someone else, you have to understand how to locate and express this thing, and also build it up into a stage of safety. So that might be explaining to your other what things you like, what words you like, what helps them slip into little space, what little props and sentences could just transport you into that moment that says, oh, you're talking to this part, not that part. You don't need my adult right now, you need my little. Or I don't need you to be my equal adult right now, you need to be my papa. And you just find those ways of being able to communicate what the need is. Once you know what the need is, and once you separate it out, because it might be sexual and non-sexual, and it might be sexual in a way that says it's not sexual, but it's born from sexual trauma. So either way, there's sexual place in it. There's either sexual shame, or there is sexual arousal, or there's shame of sexual arousal. Either way, quite often it stems from something sexual. So we still have to understand it, but we've got to try and separate it out. Then create little, getting this book from Cover Me Little, great way to start. One of their books really just gives you loads of really fun ideas and ways to just be accountable for your little space. And if you know it's, I don't eat well, or I don't drink a lot of water, or I don't self-care, or I just don't think about myself, you can start putting in things that say, right, on the daily I'm going to do a little bit of exercise, some yoga, or some little's ballet, or something that just gets my body moving. I'm going to listen to a story time and try and act it out with my body and like do the things. I'm going to get into that body space of movement. I'm going to make sure I have a story time. I'm going to do a little accountability chart of ticking off my self-care, of my ablutions to clean my teeth and all that, and my feeding and nutrition and water, and my little space. So have I visited it specifically? Have I had a story time or a bath time, or watched a program that has soothed that space, so that you can tick them off? Creating a little booklet. I've done one with Papa. I've put it in my child part work 1, 2 and 3 if you want to look at it properly, but it has different pages for rewards, prompts, words, wish lists, expeditions and outings that I might like to go on. I've done a Pinterest board for Papa, and he's part of it, and I get him to look on there, and I might pin something that is that is like.
I remember looking at it.
I nudge you when I've added a few extra things that like he could buy or he could see, and like lots of people do little memes that are like that. You could just cross out the one that isn't you, but like all these others are me. Like that's yummy and totally up my street. So they realize, oh, you actually want me to treat you like a baby. Oh, you want me to use these words. Oh, you want me to like hold your hand when you cross the road. Oh, I get it now. Now I understand what you mean. So implementing those plans and executing them is about being accountable for what you set yourself up. And what you set yourself up is based on having a dialogue and relationship with it on a meaningful level. So it might be at the beginning that you work on safety. Then it might be on expression, and then on routines to get your body back in your body, and then routines to get your head out of space and back connected to yourself, or create a routine, a monthly routine. So once a month you're going to have a baby's bath time. Once a week you're going to have a baby's bedtime with a nappy and a bottle and a story time and a dummy and a rah-rah or a blankie. Once a month you're going to do an outing, and you're going to fill up a full pot of sticks that has different outings on, so you can pick one, or you're going to get yourself some littlespace products so that you can start using them. And whenever you have something to eat, you want it little, if you please, or whatever. So you can start incorporating it in little ways on a daily level. So have you had any more feedback or any other questions?
No.
Okay. So let me just check. What time are we? Oh, we're at the 90 minutes. So I'm going to save this other bit for the next time, maybe. Or maybe I'll just do a therapy bubble. It was all about neuroscience. So anyway, thanks so much, everyone, for coming along. Thank you so much, Papa, for being my buddy and everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And thank you, everyone, for being part of it. And we'll see you at the next live therapy, which is usually every third Saturday, 7 p.m. British summertime, although we'll be going to British mean time. Is it called?
Don't know. British
winter time, British mean time, something. The other one, we go back or forward an hour at some point soon. So it'll be a slightly different time for you guys.
It'll be an hour earlier or later.
Does the whole world do that though at the same time?
No, only England.
Okay. So there will be
everyone has their own time zones.
Okay. But no, not everyone changes it in winter. They don't all put the clocks back.
I don't know.
Oh no, because they won't all be at winter, will they?
No.
Yeah. Okay. We're not good at whatever that is. Okay, so thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see you soon. And if you have any topics or questions, or you want to send me an email with a storytelling, or you want something anonymized so that we can unpack it as like a case study, that would be brilliant. If we had someone send in a full-on major case study type document that we could like unpack and do a thing on, and I'll keep it anonymous. If anyone wants to donate their story, please do. No worries if you don't. The comments and questions that we're getting is a lot of content anyway.
Lots of people said thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming.
Have a great weekend and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, guys. Have a great time, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.